North Korea if they keep provoking the United States. Former independent senator and Democratic vice presidential nominee Joe Lieberman saying he has no problem with President Trump's choice of words.
I know that President Trump's words were strong, but I'm not upset about them because we've tried for years and years, really decades, diplomatic language and a lot else with the North Koreans, and it hasn't worked. I mean, this goes back to the 90s when President Clinton, in really good faith, negotiated an agreement with Kim Jong-un's father, which gave the North Koreans billions of dollars in return for a promise to stop their nuclear program, to put the brakes on, and then stop it altogether. They essentially took the money and ran.
Bruce Klingner joins me now. He's a senior research fellow for Northeast Asia at the Heritage Foundation's Asian Studies Center. Also served as the CIA's deputy division chief for Korea. And Bruce, you do have a bit of an issue with the president's choice of words, or so I've read.
Well, I think the words themselves were a bit over the top. They sounded like they had been penned by Pyongyang. I think his intent was to try to not only deter North Korea from continuing the development of its ICBM, but also to send a sign of resolve to our allies. But the wording tends to affirm the concerns by our allies that the U.S. may be considering or even preparing for a preventative attack, which could unleash an all-out war on the Korean Peninsula. So I think we can send signals of resolve and deterrence, but not in a way that alienates or concerns our allies.
But Kim Jong-un thinks the nuclear weapons that he has now developed, I mean, he's got the warheads apparently that will fit on the missiles that he's developed. He thinks those are the magic bullet that are going to prevent him from being attacked by the United States, destroying his country and certainly his regime.
Right. North Korea's nuclear weapons serve a number of objectives from their point of view. They would see it as deterring the U.S. attack. They point to the downfall of Saddam Hussein and Gaddafi and Milosevic in Yugoslavia, and they say the mistake of those dictators was they didn't have nuclear weapons. The U.S. would see it as an attempt to deter us from responding to a North Korean attack, perhaps against one of our allies. Also, the nuclear weapons enables North Korea to engage in more forceful, coercive diplomacy, trying to intimidate our allies, particularly South Korea, perhaps trying to push South Korea to do things that it otherwise wouldn't want to do.
You are not surprised at the speed with which they have developed this weaponry. Many other analysts are, but you say back in the 90s, when you were at CIA, you saw this coming.
Right. We worked on an unclassified national intelligence estimate. It's out there on the internet in 1999, where we predicted that by the year 2015, North Korea would have the capability of hitting the continental United States with a nuclear weapon. So we may have been off a few years, but I think it shows that this is really a development that's a long time coming. But over the years, there seems to be a tendency to dismiss or downplay North Korea's military capabilities. In the 90s, people dismissed the plutonium weapons program, and the George W. Bush administration, people dismissed the existence of a uranium weapons program. Even in 2007, when Israel took out a nuclear reactor in Syria, people dismissed that as an actual reactor which North Korea was helping with. And then more recently, people tend to say, well, it's still several years away before North Korea can develop a certain capability, and the experts have been saying that for several years. So I think really it's a long time coming, and but that doesn't make it any less troublesome and worrisome.
Other than Hiroshima, obviously, the world has never seen a nuclear war, partly because the policy of mutually assured destruction worked with the Soviet Union and the Chinese. They have thousands of nuclear warheads. Is North Korea different?
Well, when people advocate a preventative attack, they usually postulate that Kim Jong-un is crazy and that we don't know what he'll do, so we need to start a war to prevent a war. I don't think Kim is crazy, nor was his father crazy. Obviously a brutal, terrible dictator, but he's not insane. He's not going to wake up some morning and start a war. When you ask people, well, how would he respond if we did a preventative attack, they usually say, well, he wouldn't respond respond because he knows the might of the U.S. military. And it's like, well, that's a rational response. So there just seems to be a bit of a disconnect in the thinking. So obviously we need to have a strong military, including missile defense systems, to deter and defend and, if necessary, defeat a threat. But I think we can go down a longer path with pressure and sanctions and targeted financial measures before we resort to a military option.
Bruce Klingner, formerly with the CIA, now at the Heritage Foundation. Bruce, thank you.
Thank you.
A major development in the search for a driver accused of deliberately slamming his car